Hello! I'm standing here to open your minds to prefab. So if you wouldn't mind just standing up for a moment and repeating after me, hand over heart optional. Prefab is not a dirty word.
Prefab is not a dirty word.
Thank you. That's right, it's not a dirty word. It's also not one of these school classrooms from the 1970s. I know, I grew up in these as well. Too hot, too flimsy, used well past their use-by date. Prefab is not just a Wellington cafe, but it is large building blocks. So I'm here to talk to you about that, like giant Lego, the kind of thing you see on grand designs. It's when we take parts of a building and make it away from the site, in a factory or in a controlled yard. And as Buckminster Fuller said last century, you wouldn't build your car in your driveway, would you? So it makes you think, why do we build our houses using small sticks, hammers and nails, in the mud and the rain? Well, this is what prefab in New Zealand looks like today. It's a wide range of types, sizes, and materials. Timber, concrete, steel, you name it. And we're really good at some of these bits. The small pieces, the pre-nail components, are in almost every new build house today. If we enclose those panels and put in windows and doors, sometimes electrical or plumbing, we have smarter panels. If we get larger, we have room-sized chunks, modules or pods. And at the grand end of the scale, we have the complete building, the transportable building. Now, New Zealand's really good at the pre-nail components and the transportable building, but the panels and the pods in the middle, that's where we've got a lot more that we could learn about. And you might wonder why I'm making you say an oath to prefab today. Well, New Zealand is in the middle of its greatest crisis. We have huge challenges and huge opportunities. We need houses fast. We need 100,000 houses by 2030. Auckland today needs 15 to 20,000 more homes. The median price is $800,000, twice that of the Wellington median of $400,000. And we are bringing up an entire generation of young professionals as Generation Rent. Affordable housing is in really short supply. And when I say affordable, I mean that a third of our income goes to service the mortgage or the rental payment. But we're not alone. The world over, we've got urban expansion. We'll have twice as many people, 7 billion people, living in our world's cities by 2050, by the middle of this century. We're going to need 10 to 30 million more apartment buildings. Pretty massive stuff. So what's New Zealand doing about this? Well, we're building in the same way we've always built, with one builder driving one ute, accompanied by one dog, to build one house over 1 year. Now, I'm no mathematical genius, but that does not add up. It's not fast enough. If we're going to get through this housing shortage, we're going to have to think smarter, we're going to have to build smarter, and we're going to have to use less resources while we're at it. And that's where I step in. So I am from a family of Lego. That's my greeny bearded husband, myself in the red, and my two daughters, Sophie and Tessa. This is a picture that Tessa drew of me. She's 6, keep that in mind. I am surrounded by houses. My Skype and my Twitter handle is PrefabPam, and I have been called a prefab prophet. Or at least I might be after this particular conversation. I come from a history in spotting the gaps, In snowboarding, that literally meant riding between the trees or around a gate. Things can be disastrous if you look at the tree. And also in small business, that's a background in making the less visible more visible and creating more options. Cool. So in my architecture background, I really subscribe to the design maxim by Ray and Charles Eames from last century about being motivated to create more design for more people for less money. More for less. Simple. I really believe that architecture should be accessible, affordable, and appreciated by a wide range of people, even our little people. And I think that housing should be important to you as well. PrefabNZ is a little non-profit that grew out of my Master of Architecture thesis, and I've been working heart and soul on it for the last 6 years. It is a membership-based body where members come from architecture, manufacturing, and building. And we're working to encourage people to look at their housing options. After all, your home is likely to be the largest single financial investment that you make in your life. So I've got a handful of reasons of why we should be looking at more housing options like this. The first is quality. As soon as you make something under a roof in controlled conditions, you're able to control the quality more. The second is around time savings. Saving time is the fastest way to save money. And by building your foundations at site at the same time as you build your pieces and parts off-site, you can double up on your time savings. You can save up to 60% of the time you'd normally spend out at site. The third reason is cost savings, and New Zealanders love these. With prefabrication, you can save $25,000 to $40,000 per house by using a mixture of systems like a bathroom pod and then wall panels. And the fourth really important reason is sustainability. Now, construction has got the unenviable reputation of being the 40% industry. So 40% of the landfill comes from construction waste. That's a pretty horrific reputation to have. So the really cool thing about prefab is that you can pre-plan and you can control your waste. You can reduce your waste inside, you can minimise, reuse, and recycle. And when it comes to waste at site, you can save up to 90% of that. Now, this building is the University of Auckland Student Accommodation Building. It was made using 468 room-sized modules that were made in Matamata. Now, when they were brought to site and stacked into position, this is the waste that was left. Pretty astounding, huh? Now, a fifth reason is health and safety, and this is gaining much more visibility in New Zealand now. And when we put our workers and our materials in an enclosed yard or a covered condition, that's much healthier for them. It's warm, it's dry, it's out of the elements. That's obvious. But another thing is that it can be a lot safer to produce some parts of our buildings down at ground level. In Sweden, they build the whole roof at ground level and then they raise it to height at site. That way they enclose a house in under a week and then it's weathertight. Brilliant. And here in Wellington, we've had buildings made where the roofs have been made down at ground level, and when one of the workers walked off the end of it, he just fell 1.5 meters rather than some unimaginable height. Okay, the sixth reason is around design. Now, as you're aware, in the digital age, we are enabled by mass customization. Every option can be varied according to our likes. It's not mass standardization like last century. So there's a lot of flexibility around what we can produce now. And the example I'm showing you here is one I like to call affordable architecture. It's where a well-known housing manufacturer joined with a high-end architect, and together they did that uncomfortable collision and enabled a new type of architecture, a really beautiful house that you can buy for like $300,000. I would be really happy to live in one of these. Cool. So we've talked about the house and the scale of our own homes and ourselves, but what about our communities? What about the scale of the whole country, Aotearoa? Well, here's some ideas. We currently grow just under 2 million hectares of plantation forestry. We export a whole lot of this. We create $5 billion, 3% of GDP, and employ over 20,000 people. But what you might not realise is that 60% of those logs sail on out of here as raw logs. We're missing out on the potential to capture jobs and export dollars. Some of our factories in our small rural towns are closing down. The towns are hollowing out, they're losing their skills and having trouble retaining their youth. These are real issues, and one of our leading economists has called some of these zombie towns. So here's a crazy idea. How can we turn raw logs into more jobs? Well, stay with me. This is my high-tech graph for value added. This is what happens when we produce and manufacture from a log through to pieces and parts, to panels, to a complete house. You can see that growth in jobs, skills, and export dollars. And what might we be exporting? Well, we might be exporting panels of all kinds, like smart timber panels. The ones I'm showing you are cross-laminated timber, or CLT. And New Zealand has got the only plant in the Southern Hemisphere to make these. It's basically giant plywood. There are other panels too, like structural insulated panels, or SIPs, heaps of acronyms. SIPs are like an Eskimo pie, wood, insulation, and wood. And there are lots of other kinds of panels that we can build with. We could have more regional, local manufacture to grow local skills and keep jobs in local places. Think about the sources of our forestry. Northland, Bay of Plenty, East Cape. We could have digital manufacture right there. We could involve ourselves with our designers with more drag and drop parts, more open source pieces that then feed into the CNC, the computer numerically controlled manufacturing equipment, who literally cut out the pieces and parts of your new home. Imagine if one day we got to the point where every 10th house could be donated back to the community where it was produced and looked after by the local iwi for their own social housing needs. Now, some of these things are being done in a very small way at the moment. PrefabNZ has just done an open source design competition for this thing called the Unipod. It's an accessible bathroom pod. It's basically a service wall that's got all your plumbing and electrical inside it. Bathroom hanging on one side, kitchen on the other. It's like the heart of your home. And you can have any size, shape, rooms that fit around it. Now, we're going to build one of these as a prototype and have that on display in April in Auckland. But what will happen next is the really exciting bit, because then it will become an open source object that anyone in New Zealand can make, maybe anyone in the world. And the neat thing is that it rests on a piece of New Zealand sourced and grown cross-laminated timber. So let's recap. Prefab, it's like pick and mix. Think Lego. The thing that's holding us back is our own perceptions and our love of the status quo. We could find out more by asking an architect, a designer, or a builder. Or check in with the prefab community, or visit a Hive home innovation village. You can come have a chat to me, and I can give you a little prefab puzzle postcard. You can have a play with one of those. I'm dreaming about a future where there is less hand tools and more smart tech, where our homes come in and are enclosed in a week and are weathertight, where our medium density buildings enable us to use less land resources and to live near our work, our schools, and our play. And where we have more young children growing up in inspirational prefab classrooms. So let's join together. Let's turn dumb logs into smart homes. Thanks.